In this video we want to talk about customer satisfaction surveys. Now, customer satisfaction is an important concept. It's the analysis and assessment of customers and how happy they are with the products and services offered by a company. So it's very important that customer satisfaction is investigated. If the customers are not happy with the product, they won't buy the product and the company will suffer. So it's important that the company knows what the customers think about the product, about the services of the company, the after-sales services, the value for money, and so on. And it's important to pick this up, and it's done through the customer satisfaction survey, generally speaking. Customer satisfaction determines how customer loyalty and future prospects of repeat purchase. It discusses how loyalty impacts on the organization, how it's manifests through more sales, for example, or diminishing sales. So how loyal are the customers to the organization and to the product? And therefore, what are the future prospects for the business? How much repeat purchases, how many repeat purchases will there be, and how do the customers view the product, and is the business sustainable in the long run? Customer satisfaction can be measured by using tools and market research techniques, but care has to be taken that the techniques used are not intrusive, and we'll talk about this in other videos as well. But it's important that the techniques are not intrusive. They're not seen as an annoyance to the customers. They should be done coolly and calmly, and with a feeling that the customer is doing something useful and they're being appreciated and so on. But not simply cold calling the customer perhaps at dinner time or at tea time and asking the customer for their opinions about the product. That is intrusive, and that could alienate the customer from the product and from the organization. So there has to be care and attention given to the timing of the survey and the content of the survey and the techniques used within the survey. And a lot of this will be the subject matter of this video. Market research and tools help organizations understand customer needs and tailor products to meet those needs. It's not a question simply of a company making a product and putting it on the market. The product it makes has to match customer wants, customer requirements. The customers must subscribe to the idea behind the product and must want the product. If they don't, then all of the activity of the business is wasted. The customers are not going to buy the product. So it's important to know what the customers want. High customer satisfaction depends on the product service quality and providing value for money. In the customer's minds, the product should represent good value for money. Customer service, being attentive to customers' needs, for example, that's important. The customers must feel that the organization is responding to their needs and to their comments if they give feedback. And after sales service, continuing the relationship marketing and customer relations, that's important. Making sure that the customers feel that they're not, in a sense, abandoned by the organization. The organization has made the sale, has taken the money, and has now abandoned the customer. So there should be after sales service, and the customers should feel that the company are interested in their opinions and want to see them getting value for money. Customer satisfaction can be conducted by the use of surveys and questionnaires. However, careful planning and implementation must be considered. First of all, analyze, or sorry, I should say an analysis of existing customers and their needs and expectations. It's always a good place to start with the existing set of customers and what the organization know about the existing set of customers. And then to decide on the sampling method and the size of the sample. Well, these are, in a sense, statistical considerations, but it is important to find out what sampling method is most likely to give the best results. Should it be face-to-face interviews, or should it be questionnaires or electronic surveys or telephone? How should it be done? How should the sampling method be decided, and which is the most appropriate? And how many customers should be questioned? That's important. It's important to pilot test the survey to determine its reliability and validity. It's important to understand what are the requirements of the investigation, and then to pilot test to make sure that those considerations are being picked up, that the questions are relevant, they're good questions, they're clearly understood, they're germane to the subject of the investigation or the survey. It's important that the questions are clearly worded, and it should be there should be a pilot test to try and iron out any issues or any ambiguity or any confusion, so that the main event, the main survey, should be conducted in a professional and worthwhile manner, that it's going to yield outcomes that are reliable. The method of research collection, for example in person, telephone or by post, it's important to decide the sampling method, as I said, in step 2, and part of the pilot test could try to identify which particular approach could be adopted. And then analyze and review the results. It's important that the analysis is done professionally and that it's done without any prejudice. In other words, the investigators or the people who are going to do the analysis do not bring their own opinions to bear or their own interpretations of the outcomes and thereby slant the findings. It's important that the outcome is as objective as possible. There are different methods of conducting research. Organizations can use many forms of survey. An appropriate survey method must be selected. A particular method determines the response rate and the reliability of the survey. So it's important that the organization tries to figure out which method of survey is most appropriate, given the nature of the product, given the market conditions, given the customers, and what the organization knows of the market and the customers and the competitors and what they're all doing. So it's important that the survey method is properly thought out. It should be discussed, considered, alternatives looked at, and the pros and cons of each carefully evaluated. So the survey's options, well, personal interview, for example, talking to the customer face to face. With personal interview, these are completed by an interviewer standing face to face with the respondent, asking straightforward questions. This may be the way in which the respondent is most comfortable and will respond, will deal with the situation. In a sense, the interviewer is doing all the work. They're completing the documentation, they're ticking the questions and asking the questions and trying to gauge what the results could be. But the interviewer should be very well trained so that they're not posing leading questions or interpreting the questions for the respondent, and perhaps interpreting the questions wrongly. Personal interviews can be carried out door to door or in store and indeed on the street. Uh, Bearing in mind, wherever the interviews are conducted, that may introduce an element of bias. If it's conducted on the street, for example, the respondent may be distracted by traffic or by people or by situations around him or her. If it's in the store, they may be in a hurry to move on to buy something else, or they may have a particular deadline in mind. Different different conditions may apply in different situations. So the precise responses will be partly determined by the location of the interview. Personal interviews must be carefully designed. Personal interviews must be quick and easy to follow, and the questions should be, if possible, quantitative. So asking somebody their opinions, that may take time. They have to think about their opinions, and they'll give their opinion, and then they'll give qualifications to the opinion and argue or discuss situations where the opinion may not apply. That's all very time consuming. It may be valid, but it is time consuming, and that may deter some respondents from cooperating right at the outset. Alternatively, quantitative questions may require an element of expertise on the part of the respondent that perhaps they're not prepared for. So asking someone, do they like a product a lot, a little, not so much, and so on, using perhaps a Likert scale, that may challenge them. They may have to think. They may get confused. What's the difference between a 5 and a 4, or a -2 and a -1? So it depends. It needs proper intervention by the interviewer, who should be adequately trained and be in a position to get around these issues should they arise. Now, the advantages of the personal interview. Well, the survey can be easily adapted to gain a greater understanding of customer needs. For example, the length of the survey is dependent on the means of communication, in store or door to door, for example. So it can be tweaked. The personal interview could be very brief, or it could be made a little longer, and perhaps the interviewer can be trained to try to judge the circumstances in which he or she finds him or herself in terms of the interview. Perhaps the respondent is easygoing and relaxed, and so prepared to give more time. Perhaps the respondent enjoys being questioned and being interviewed. They feel important. Or alternatively, they may be in a hurry. They haven't got a lot of time. So it all depends. I think it's a situation where the personal interviewer should be able to make some judgment and hopefully be trained and understand the circumstances and get it right. Personal interviews offer opportunities for the use of visual prompts, the use of show cards and pictures to illustrate products and services. That may help the respondent to understand the question, understand the product that's been spoken about. It gives clarity to the respondent, and they may be more willing to cooperate and also give more precise answers, because the use of these visual aids or visual prompts can help them. Personal interviews allow for better communications and observation. A good relationship between interviewer and respondent improves quality and quantity of research. So it's a question of having good communications, being clearly understood by the respondent, being presentable and non-threatening. The respondent has to feel comfortable talking to the person. Now, after all, they could be complete strangers. So to what extent does the respondent feel comfortable in talking to a complete stranger? So what's the relationship, and how well can the interviewer build up a rapport with the respondent? The disadvantages of personal interviews, well, the process is very costly and requires trained marketers and interviewers to conduct the survey. It is costly because the interviewers have to be paid. They have to be trained as well. They have to be trained extensively to be able to deal with questions and be able to prompt the respondent without leading the respondent, without influencing their answers. They should be able to prompt. So it has to be trained, and of course that takes time, takes training, and so on. And so it is a costly exercise. Well-trained interviews must be trained to deal with respondents. As I said, untrained interviewers can unintentionally influence the respondent, causing biased results. And that means that the whole activity is a waste of time. In fact, the whole activity could be dangerous. It could mislead the organisation into thinking something which is not true. So it's important that this investment in training and in preparation for the interview is adequately resourced and delivered. Some respondents may feel uncomfortable, answering personal or sensitive questions, and this affects the reliability of the research data. As I said, essentially these are two strangers, and if the respondent is asking, in a sense, personal questions, to what extent the respondent likes the product or uses the product or in what context they use the product, these could be interpreted as very intrusive questions, and the respondent may feel reticence about participating, and that can affect the usefulness of this technique. Telephone interviews is another form of survey approach. Well, telephone interviews are another form of survey. Unlike personal interviews, the interview is conducted over the telephone, as the title suggests. So here, the investigator, the interviewer, contacts the respondent over the telephone. Telephone interview questions tend to be the same as personal interviews, only the means of communication is different. So they tend to be roughly the same type of questions, but the communications is different. It's not face-to-face, it's over a telephone. There are lots of issues associated here with this. For example, using the telephone, it's difficult to read the respondent's feelings about the whole activity. They can't make eye-to-eye contact, and they can't see facial expressions, and they can't read the situation very well. They're relying on a technology. It is, of course, more efficient in terms of resources, but it could also be more unreliable. Telephone interview is an effective means of reaching a wider customer base. Certainly it's the case that simply calling people who are geographically separated out, this is a good way of doing it. But it is biased. The people have to have a telephone, they have to be in at the time, and of course they may not take the activity very seriously. Telephone interviews are a faster means of data collection, and they are a cost-effective method. They are cheaper to do, and they are very fast. You just make a phone call, ask some people some questions, and those are the answers. At least that's what it appears to be. They're effective for business-to-business markets, national and international consumers. Particularly business-to-business, because business-to-business understand the importance of giving feedback and helping out, in a sense, colleagues who want to know what the response to a particular product is, or what are the issues in the market. So business to business, they tend to be more helpful. If it's international as well, if someone phones you from a different country, it clearly sounds important. Although with modern communications techniques, it is possible to phone around the world for almost nothing, and which means that the value of international calls, in a sense, have been devalued. It's been reduced because modern communications techniques has made this much cheaper. So therefore, it's not taken as seriously. Telephone surveys are appropriate for continuous research to track customer satisfaction on a regular basis. Well, it may be possible to establish a relationship with certain customers and call them back from time to time to gauge how they feel about the product and what changes they would like to see based on their experience of using the product and so on. So it may be possible, but there may also be issues. Disadvantages. Well, the interview process is shorter than personal interviews. To avoid respondents losing interest, questions have to be simple and relevant. So, straightforward questions, and it usually has to be quite a short activity. People will not sit on the phone for a long period of time answering a lot of sophisticated questions. They will get bored and they will want to do something else. After all, why should they help out? There's no access to visual aids. This may be problematic for customers who have, let's say, special needs. Or indeed, just customers who don't quite understand the product that's been discussed, or the ways in which the product could be used. So they have to rely entirely on what's been said on the phone. And that may be a problem. There's no face-to-face contact, which makes it difficult to predict emotions and customer behaviour. The interviewer can't see the respondent, and therefore they can't judge what the respondent is feeling or doing. With face-to-face contact, if the respondent is rolling his or her eyes or starting to look around, it means they're losing concentration, they're losing attention, they're not that interested, and something can be put back in place. The interviewer can try to regain interest in the respondent. But with the telephone, they can't see the respondent, so they don't know. But as I said at the outset, one of the bigger issues here is the bad publicity that telephone interviews are getting. Just cold calling customers to ask their opinions is seen as intrusive. It could also mask some sort of selling activity. That, first of all, the interviewer is trying to determine the respondent's attitude to a certain product or a certain market condition, and then goes on to try and sell a product. And all of this is now joined together to build up a type of resistance to the use of telephone interviews. And for that reason, they seem to be becoming less popular. Self-completing questionnaires. Well, self-completing questionnaires are another form of customer satisfaction survey. The questionnaires are provided to customers and they complete as and when they prefer. So they might be, for example, sent through the post. It's just a questionnaire and delivered to various households, and then they fill them out whenever they have time and post them back in, let's say, a self an addressed envelope with postage paid. This form of survey gives complete customer independence. The survey can be completed in store, sent through the post, or fax. Fax is the old-fashioned technology that was used, but sometimes it gets mentioned in the literature. Nowadays, the self-completing questionnaires may more than likely go by email or be published online in terms of electronic forms. But one way or the other, it's the customer is in charge of as and when he or she completes it, and the amount of detail they put onto the form and how they return it. Now, the advantages of self-completing questionnaires. Well, the survey is low cost as there's no need to employ trained interviewers. So once the form has been designed, it's sent out. So there's no trained interviewers required here. It eliminates any bias imposed by the interviewer as a consequence. So the interviewer does not exist, so the interviewer cannot bias the respondent. The respondents get complete confidentiality as the survey offers anonymity. Well, the respondents can fill it out as and when they want and send it back, and it's anonymous. So the respondents can feel comfortable about completing it. The method is good for respondents who do not feel comfortable with personal or telephone interviews. People may not want, as I said, to talk to a complete stranger or feel reticent about talking to a complete stranger, but filling out a form may get over this problem. It offers a wide range of distribution methods, as I said, post, fax, the old technology, in-store, personally. It could be electronic, it could be on a website, it could be emailed, and so on. It improves the response rate, or it's believed to improve the response rate, but there are arguments against this. The questionnaire must be simple and easy to understand, as there's no interviewers to help with clarification. This may impact on response rate and deter respondents. So it's important that the form is very clearly designed, and to that end should be piloted and tested well in advance before it's sent out. The reliability of the data and its accuracy may be a problem. Respondents may complete questionnaires in a hurry and give little thought to the questions, and that's a problem. They may just fill it out and send it back as quickly as possible. And questionnaires sent by post may not be completed and returned by all customers. It's relying on the goodwill of the customer. To what extent should the customer be involved in this process? Why should they? Why should they complete it? Why should they give up their valuable time to complete these forms? And that's the problem. Electronic survey. Well, electronic survey consists of two types: email surveys and website surveys. The electronic surveys are similar to self-completing forms. But again, they may be seen as just a nuisance. Or why should someone spend time filling out the form online and sending it back? What does the respondent get from this activity? They may get a better product, a better service. They may be entered into a free draw for a foreign holiday or a car or something of this nature. They may get something like that back, but it's a lot of effort. So many people will be put off right from the start. Customers tend to receive an email informing them of a survey and instructions how to complete the survey. Emails normally contain a URL of online web survey. So people have to click on the URL, and on the URL they're taken to a different page where the form exists. But again, why should the customers do that? And perhaps to see an email containing a link from someone as spam. They may be sorted straight into the spam box and not even get opened. They're just intrusive or unwanted emails. So why should they respond? Customers can complete electronic surveys as and when they wish. Some organisations offer vouchers and discounts for customers who complete online surveys, thereby, of course, increasing the response rate. So there has to be some sort of inducement to encourage the respondents to participate. Now, the advantages. Well, electronic surveys are very quick to complete. By and large, this should be. The form should be very straightforward and very easy to complete. And the results of the surveys are instant. They can be analysed quite easily on the server, and the results posted back to the website almost instantaneously. It's a cost-effective means of conducting research. There's no cost in printing, no paper or ink or postage and all of that. No trained interviewers required. It's a very cheap way of trying to get information. So it's very easy to embed graphics and multimedia into online surveys. There might even be an explanation video telling the respondent about the survey and why they've been approached to complete it, and there may be graphics or animations or all sorts of attachments. Now, some of these, of course, the respondent may be reticent or reluctant to open because of fear of viruses. So there are issues as well. A large sample can be conducted and a wider customer base can be reached. Well, it's the internet, and the internet is vast. So if the contacts or a database of contacts exists, then it could be a very large survey. But of course, it raises also issues about companies who buy email addresses and companies who sell email addresses. Is this fair? Is it right that people should be spammed and asked for their cooperation? After all, the people who received the emails didn't go actively looking to be involved in this way. So there are issues about that. The electronic survey can exclude certain target groups. For example, some people say the elderly and customers who are IT illiterate. Now, it has to be admitted that more and more elderly people are using the internet and becoming internet savvy. So maybe that is not so much an issue anymore. And likewise, there's greater understanding of IT in the population. And it's certainly filtering out throughout the world. More and more people are picking up the skills for using electronic means of communications. If it's perceived, as I said, as junk mail, surveys can be easily discarded by customers. It can be filtered straight into the spam box, so they're not even opened. And this could lead to a low response rate. And as I said, if there are attachments which are meant to be helpful, they may not be opened because of fear of viruses. So sometimes customers may not complete a survey without incentive, discounts and vouchers. After all, the organisation is asking the respondent to give up some of his or her time to fill out this questionnaire. So why should they? They need to be compensated for their time. And it can be unreliable if the survey has been completed in a hurry. Most customers do not complete surveys unless they have to. So if they have to complete the survey, or if they feel that they should complete the survey, perhaps they don't think about the responses very precisely. They just fill out some responses and send it back. So it's not being well thought out. And that could be actually dangerous for the organisation if they're aiming to launch a new product into the market and they're relying on customers' responses or potential customers' responses. And if the customers are not thinking about what they're saying in any great depth, they're not paying due care and attention, this could lead to wrong information, bad data going back to the organisation, which could lead the organisation to make mistakes in terms of design, product development and so on. So it could be quite dangerous. So these are some of the ways in which customer satisfaction surveys can be developed and completed, and these are some of the issues that need to be considered when looking at customer satisfaction surveys, and the criticisms as well. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it for that and say thank you for watching.